My daughter-in-law posted online that I was broke and bitter. She made me look small in front of family, friends, and even strangers. I said nothing at first, but then I remembered a video she once begged me to delete. With one click, I hit share. The comments exploded, and people finally saw the real story she had tried to hide. Before I tell you what happened next, make sure you subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments where you are watching from. My name is Helen Brooks. I am 64 years old, a widow, and I live a simple life in a small house that my husband and I bought together many years ago. I don't have much money, but I have peace, and I have my family, which has always meant more to me than anything else. My son, Daniel, is 35. He works hard, provides for his family, and has always been a good man. I raised him with love, and I am proud of the person he became. He married a woman named Samantha, who everyone calls Sam. She is 32, very focused on how she looks and how people see her online. She loves social media, posts about her perfect life, and always wants people to admire her. Daniel and Sam have a daughter, Lily. She is 10 years old, and she is the light of my life. Whenever she sees me, she runs into my arms as if nothing else in the world matters. Lily doesn't care if I drive an old car or if my clothes are simple. To her, I am just Grandma, and that is the most beautiful title I will ever have. But not everything in my family feels beautiful. Samantha has never hidden her dislike for me. She doesn't shout at me in public, but she makes sharp comments that cut deep. Once, at a family dinner, she told me with a laugh, "Nobody cares about your old stories." Another time, she rolled her eyes when I brought a homemade pie, whispering to her friends. Of course, she brings something cheap again. Daniel tried to smooth things over, but I always ended up sitting in silence, swallowing my hurt. I tried to stay patient. I told myself that as long as I had Daniel and Lily, it didn't matter what Sam thought of me. I never wanted to start fights or make my son choose between his wife and his mother. I tried to carry myself with dignity, even when I felt unwanted, but deep inside, those small cuts piled up. And then came the day when the wound broke open for everyone to see. I opened my phone one afternoon and saw her post. It was on Facebook, written for the world. She had typed, "She's broke and bitter, always complaining, always acting like a victim." Underneath, her friends were laughing, adding comments, and clicking the little emojis. Some people I even knew. My heart sank as I stared at the screen. It felt like a public slap across the face. She had taken all the things I quietly carried and turned them into a weapon against me. The humiliation spread quickly. A woman from church called me that evening, asking carefully if I was all right. Even my neighbor mentioned it. The next morning, Sam's words had left me exposed, and I could feel the eyes of others on me. I wanted to say something, to defend myself, but I didn't. I stayed quiet. I told myself that silence was stronger than shouting, but deep inside, I felt my dignity slipping away. I began to wonder if maybe she would win, if maybe her version of me would be the only one people believed. That was when I remembered the video, the one she had begged me to delete. I sat on the edge of my bed, with my phone still in my hand, staring at the words on the screen over and over again. "She's broke and bitter." It felt like the letters themselves were pressing down on me, heavier each time I read them. My daughter-in-law had written those words for the world to see. She didn't just think them privately. She wanted everyone to believe them. At first, I thought maybe it would be ignored. Maybe it was just another cruel comment thrown into the noise of the internet. But then the likes appeared, the laughing emojis, and the comments. People I didn't even know chimed in. Some laughed along. Others said things like, "Sounds like a typical bitter mother-in-law." A few even added their own stories of family drama, piling more shame onto me without even knowing who I was. The sting wasn't just in her words. It was in the silence that followed. My son Daniel didn't call me. He didn't post to defend me. I told myself he was busy, or maybe he didn't see it yet. But the longer the hours passed, the more I felt like I was standing alone. By the next morning, I couldn't escape it. At the grocery store, one woman glanced at me with pity. At church, a friend approached carefully and asked if everything at home was all right. The post had spread farther than I thought it would. My private pain was now public, and I had no voice in the matter. I went home, sat down at my kitchen table, and cried. I felt stripped of every bit of respect I had tried to keep. I wasn't rich. I lived simply. I didn't have fancy clothes or a big house, but I had never been bitter. I had always tried to be grateful for what I did have. To have someone paint me as bitter and pitiful was almost worse than if she had insulted me directly to my face. As I wiped my tears, I remembered the video. Months earlier, during a family dinner, Samantha had snapped at me in front of Daniel. She mocked my old car, my clothes, and even my cooking. Her words came sharp, coated in sarcasm but filled with venom. She told me, "You'll never really be part of this family. Stop pretending." That night, I had been recording a little video of Lily playing the piano on my phone. Without realizing it, I had also caught Samantha's voice in the background, saying those cruel things. When Samantha found out, she had gone pale. She pulled me aside after dinner, her voice low and urgent. "You need to delete that," she demanded. "If anyone sees that, they'll misunderstand me. That's not who I really am." Her tone wasn't apologetic. It was threatening. She begged, but it was clear she wasn't worried about me. She was worried about her image, the perfect life she worked so hard to show online. I almost deleted it that night, but something inside me stopped my finger before I hit the button. I saved the video quietly, slipping it into a hidden folder on my phone, and never spoke of it again. Until now. As I sat at the kitchen table, with Samantha's cruel Facebook post still glowing on my screen, I realized that silence had done nothing to protect me. For years, I had held my tongue, swallowed insults, and avoided conflict. And what did it bring me? A public humiliation so deep, I could barely look people in the eye. I told myself I didn't want revenge. I wasn't interested in making her suffer. But another truth pressed against my heart. If I stayed silent again, then her words would become the only story people knew about me. She had written her version of who I was, and everyone was reading it. But the video, that was my version. That was the truth, not filtered, not twisted, not a polished caption on social media. Just raw truth of how she treated me when no one was supposed to hear. I picked up my phone, opened the gallery, and found the video. My thumb hovered over it, trembling. I hesitated, my chest tight with fear. What if Daniel hated me for sharing it? What if it embarrassed Lily? What if people thought I was trying to ruin their marriage? I set the phone down and pressed my palms against my eyes. I didn't want to hurt my family. But hadn't I already been hurt? Wasn't the wound already wide open? I thought about the people whispering at church, the looks at the grocery store, the pity in my friend's voice. I thought about the years of little comments, digs, and dismissals. And then I thought about Lily, sweet Lily, who ran into my arms without caring what car I drove or what clothes I wore. I thought about her growing up in a world where her mother's version of me might be the only one she ever heard. And that was the moment something inside me shifted. I told myself, no more silence. Not this time. I picked up my phone again. The video was still there, waiting. My hand was shaking, but the decision had already been made. I sat there at my kitchen table with the video pulled up on my phone, my hand frozen over the screen. The play button glowed at me like a challenge, daring me to press it. I replayed the sound of Samantha's voice in my head, the sharpness of her words, the way she had laughed at my old car and my simple clothes. The moment she told me to stop pretending I was part of the family. It had been months, but those words never left me. They had lived inside me like a bruise that wouldn't heal. Now, after her Facebook post calling me broke and bitter, the bruise had turned into a wound. I knew if I stayed silent, her version of me would spread. People already believed it. They were laughing at me, pitying me, whispering about me. My son hadn't spoken up. My neighbors had heard. Even my church community looked at me with questioning eyes. But the video in my hands, it was the truth. It wasn't edited. It wasn't twisted. It was her voice, her words, her real behavior. For once, the truth was mine to hold. I closed my eyes and took a long breath. My heart pounded, my chest heavy with fear and doubt. Sharing that video felt like stepping onto a stage with every light in the world shining on me. I had never been the type to seek attention. I had always believed that dignity came from holding my tongue and rising above insults. But now, silence didn't feel like dignity anymore. felt like surrender. Just then, I heard the sound of small footsteps running down the hall. Lily came into the kitchen, her hair messy from playing, her face glowing with that innocent brightness only a child can have. She climbed onto the chair beside me and asked, "Grandma, why are you sad?" I forced a smile. "I'm not sad, sweetheart, just thinking." But children always know the truth. She looked at me seriously and said, "Mom said some mean things about you online. I saw it on her phone, but I don't believe it. You're not broke and bitter. You're the best part of our family." Her words hit me like a spark in the darkness. I felt my throat tighten, and tears filled my eyes. Out of everyone in the world, Lily's opinion mattered most. She didn't care about money or image. She knew me for who I truly was. And in that moment, her simple honesty gave me the strength I had been missing. I hugged her tight. "Thank you, Lily," I whispered. "You don't know how much that means to me." After she skipped back down the hallway, I stared again at my phone. My doubt began to fade, replaced by a steady resolve. If Samantha wanted to paint me as bitter, let her. But I wasn't going to sit back and let lies be the only story told. I wasn't going to let my granddaughter grow up believing her mother's cruel version of me. I opened Facebook. My hands were trembling as I clicked through my gallery, selected the video, and pressed upload. For a moment, I froze again, my finger hovering over the button. Fear whispered in my ear. What if Daniel hates you for? What if the family breaks apart? But then I remembered all the times I had bitten my tongue, all the times I had been mocked, dismissed, or shoved aside. I remembered the humiliation of sitting at church while people looked at me with pity after reading Samantha's post. And I remembered Lily's voice, so clear and certain. "You're the best part of our family." That was the truth, and the truth deserved to be heard. With a deep breath, I pressed share. The upload bar filled slowly, every second stretching out like an eternity. I almost canceled it. My finger hovered near the screen, my heart racing, but I forced myself to let it finish. And then it was done. The video was live. For the first time in years, I felt a strange rush inside me. Not anger, not revenge, but power. Not the kind of power that hurts others, but the kind of power that comes from no longer hiding. I hadn't added any captions. I hadn't written a single word to explain myself. I didn't need to. The video spoke louder than anything I could say. I set the phone down on the table, my hands shaking, my heart pounding. I sat back in my chair, exhaling the breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Whatever happened next, there was no turning back. The moment I pressed share, I felt the weight of the world in my chest. I had no idea what would come next. For years, I had been quiet. I had swallowed every comment, every insult, every time Samantha rolled her eyes at me. And now, with one tap of my finger, I had chosen to speak without saying a word. At first, there was nothing, just silence. I stared at the screen, refreshing, waiting. Then it began. A notification popped up. One comment, another followed, then 5, then 10. My phone buzzed nonstop, the sound almost startling in the quiet of my little kitchen. I picked it up, and my eyes widened as I scrolled. People were watching the video. They were listening, and they were furious. One person wrote, "This is disgusting. How could anyone speak to their mother-in-law like this?" Another added, "She mocked her own family like that? Shameful." Comment after comment poured in. Dozens, then hundreds. Some came from people I knew from church, others from neighbors. Even people I didn't know joined in, tagging friends, sharing the video further. Within an hour, the video had spread far beyond my little circle. The image Samantha had worked so hard to build online, the smiling wife, the perfect mother, the polished woman who always posed with a glass of champagne and a new dress, crumbled in minutes. People were no longer looking at her carefully curated photos. They were looking at her real voice, her cruel words, her mask slipping in front of her own family. My hand shook as I read the comments. For so long, I had been invisible. Now suddenly, I wasn't just seen, I was defended. People weren't laughing at me. They weren't calling me broke or bitter. They were standing with me, furious on my behalf. It felt like the entire internet had turned to hold me up. Then came the message I knew was inevitable. My son Daniel called. My stomach knotted as I answered. His voice was tense. "Mom, what did you just post? Sam is losing her mind. She's saying you're trying to ruin her." I swallowed hard, bracing myself. "Daniel, I didn't add a word. I didn't twist anything. That video was from our own dinner table. Those were her words, not mine. I kept it hidden because I didn't want to hurt you. But after what she posted about me yesterday, I couldn't stay silent anymore. I won't let lies define me. There was silence on the line. For a long time, Daniel didn't respond. Then I heard him exhale sharply. I watched it. I know what I heard. Mom, I had no idea she spoke to you like that. I'm so sorry. His voice cracked, and I knew he was torn between love for his wife and shame at what she had done. Meanwhile, the comments on the video kept climbing. People called her a bully, a hypocrite, a woman obsessed with image, but empty of kindness. Friends she once leaned on stopped defending her. Even her own cousin commented, I always wondered why you treated Helen so coldly. Now everyone sees it. By evening, Samantha called me directly. Her voice was sharp, full of panic. Delete it right now. You're humiliating me. You don't know what this is doing to me. Everyone is turning on me. I closed my eyes and answered calmly. Samantha, I didn't do this to you. You did this to yourself. I only showed the truth. She tried to argue, but I ended the call. I wasn't going to let her words weigh on me any. That night, Daniel came by the house with Lily. He hugged me tightly and said, I should have seen this sooner. I should have stood up for you. I let her disrespect you, and I can't change that. But I promise, Mom, it won't happen again. His eyes were wet, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had my son back. Lily climbed onto my lap, hugging me with all her little strength. Grandma, she whispered, I'm glad people finally know the truth. I told you, you're the best part of our family. The video had spread far and wide, but what mattered most was what happened inside that small circle of people who knew me, who loved me. For years, I had been silent, believing that keeping peace meant keeping quiet. But in that moment, surrounded by my son and granddaughter, I realized peace doesn't come from silence when you're being crushed. Peace comes from standing up with the truth. The next morning, I checked Facebook again. The video had thousands of views, hundreds of comments. Most of them were from strangers, but nearly all of them echoed the same message. Respect should never be optional. For the first time in years, I felt no shame, no humiliation. Instead, I felt strength. I had spoken, without raising my voice, without trading insults, without cruelty. I had spoken through the truth, and the truth had done what my silence never could. The morning after the video went viral, I woke up earlier than usual. I made a pot of coffee and sat staring at the steam. My phone buzzed nonstop with new notifications. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel dread. I felt calm. The truth was out there, and I didn't need to explain myself. I opened Facebook. The video had been shared hundreds of times, and the comments had multiplied overnight. People wrote messages of support, telling me I was brave, that I didn't deserve the way I had been treated. Others warned Samantha that cruelty always comes back to reveal itself. Some strangers even shared their own stories of being mistreated by family, and I realized this wasn't just about me. It was about every person who had ever been silenced and made to feel small. I scrolled slowly, reading each one. Every word chipped away at the shame that had been sitting on my shoulders for years. For so long, I thought silence meant strength, but silence had only allowed lies to grow. By sharing the truth, I had reclaimed the respect that had been stripped from me, and I had given voice to something many others had experienced. That day, Daniel came over again. His face looked tired, but his eyes were softer than they had been in years. He sat across from me and held my hand. Mom, he said, I don't know what's going to happen between me and Sam, but I do know this. You don't ever have to carry this alone again. I should have defended you sooner. I should have made it clear that you are part of this family no matter what. I'm sorry. I squeezed his hand. You don't need to apologize, son. You see things now. That's what matters. For the first time, I felt like Daniel truly understood the pain I had hidden, and that was worth more than any apology. Samantha stayed quiet in the days that followed. She didn't call me again. Her social media, once full of polished photos and glowing captions, went silent. A few of her old friends unfollowed her, and the comments under her old posts were filled with criticism. The perfect mask she had worked so hard to keep had cracked, and there was no way to glue it back together. I didn't feel joy at her downfall. I didn't smile at her embarrassment. Instead, I felt a kind of release, like I had finally put down a heavy stone I had been carrying for years. I hadn't shared the video to ruin her. I had shared it to save myself, to stop letting lies define who I was. And most importantly, I thought about Lily. Children watch more closely than we realize. I didn't want her to grow up believing that cruelty should be hidden, or that silence was the answer to injustice. I wanted her to see that truth, even when it hurts, is always stronger than lies. When she looked at me and said, "Grandma, you're brave," I knew she had learned something that might carry her through her own life one day. Weeks later, the noise around the video began to quiet. People moved on to other stories, other dramas, as the internet always does. But inside my home, the change remained. My neighbors greeted me warmly again, my church friends hugged me tighter, and Daniel came by more often. He wanted Lily to spend more time with me, and each visit reminded me that my place in this family was not behind a closed door. It was right beside them. Looking back, I realized that my entire life had prepared me for this moment. All those years of patience, of trying to keep peace, of quietly enduring, none of it was wasted. It shaped me into someone who could stand up with dignity when it mattered most. The truth wasn't loud, it wasn't fancy, but it was undeniable. And in the end, it was enough. I learned that dignity isn't about staying silent when someone mistreats you. True dignity comes when you find the courage to stand, even if your voice shakes, and let the truth be seen. It doesn't matter how carefully someone builds their image. If it's built on lies, the truth will always find its way through. So if you've ever felt like your voice didn't matter, if you've ever been pushed into silence, remember this. One small act of courage can change everything. You don't need to shout. You don't need to fight with cruelty. You only need to hold on to the truth. And when the moment comes, let it speak for you. That is what I did, and it set me free. Before you go, if this story touched your heart, make sure you subscribe to my channel and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to hear your story too.